Welcome to Nebraska. I'm Tom, and this is my journey down the Cowboy Trail. You'll see my cousin zooming off here, leaving me and my buddy in the dust. That was a pretty common theme throughout this trip. You saw two people pass us by there, and I know we chose the bad time of year to do this because they were the only ones we saw throughout our entire 195-mile journey. One of the cool features of this trail is that there are 221 bridges. While there are some really cool bridges, I think they are counting all these small ones you were watching us pass over. Unfortunately, due to the flooding a few years back, a lot of the major bridges were knocked out. This caused us to have to jump off the trail and follow the highways at a few points on our journey. I gotta give a big thanks to my dad and my uncle for running support. They met us every 10 miles or so to make sure we had enough water and supplies, and I don't think we would have made it without them. This was originally planned as a bikepacking trip where we would carry all of our gear, but the day we scheduled to take off ended up being the hottest day of 2021. It topped out at 103 degrees. I think this is the only biking footage I had of the first day because the GoPro chest mount I had was just too restrictive on my breathing, and the heat made it too hard for me to film. If I'm being honest, I did not make it all 195 miles as I had to cut it short the first day. I was too hot, I stopped sweating, and at one point I began to get the chills. It's a really strange feeling when it's 100 degrees outside and you are shivering. Luckily, my uncle's a paramedic and advised us on the signs of heat stroke, so they picked me up and gave me a ride for the last 15 miles of the first day. We set up camp the first night at the O'Neill Fairgrounds after a nice steak dinner and got some rest so that we could head out early the next morning in hopes of beating the heat. Stopped at a gas station to stock up on some snacks to the road, and everything was going great. Until I flew over my handlebars because I was following my buddy too close. Luckily, that was my only crash throughout the entirety of our trip. If you are watching this and planning on taking this trip, the biggest piece of advice I could give you is to either bring a lot of spare tire tubes or get tubeless tires. There's Texas sandburr seeds, also known as puncture vine, all throughout this trail. I did not plan for this, and the only bike shops along the trail are in Norfolk and Valentine at the two ends of the trail. I brought 2 extra tubes and a tire repair kit, and by the end of the second day, I was entirely out of supplies. Thankfully, I was able to find a local mechanic that had some extra bike tire patches. I think in total, I had to stop and patch the tire about 8 different times. By the end of the trip, my tubes looked like Frankenstein. My cousin was running tubeless tires, and even he was experiencing some leaks towards the end of the day. My buddy was running puncture-resistant tires as well as some sort of puncture-resistant tubes, and he was the only one that did not have any issues. This trail was originally part of the Fremont, Elkhorn, and Missouri Valley Railroad and was constructed back in the 1870s and 90s and ran until 1992 when it was abandoned. The next year, it was purchased by the Rails to Trails Conservancy in an effort to create a 12-state cross-country bike trail, spanning from Maryland to Oregon. They then gifted the land to the state of Nebraska, and it is now maintained by the Nebraska Game and Parks. There are plans to extend the trail all the way to Chadron, Nebraska, and they're making progress on it at about 20 miles per year. When it's finally complete, it will be 321 miles long, and it will be the longest rail-to-trail conversion in the United States. Since this is a rail-to-trail conversion, at no point is it steeper than a 4% grade. It starts in Norfolk at about 1,500 feet of elevation and is a long, slow climb until about 20 miles outside of Valentine when it tops out at 2,700. A little over 1,000 feet of elevation gain throughout the trip. This is honestly a fantastic ride. Nebraska is one of the flattest states, and as a biker, this can be really nice. As you head west, the state slowly turns into an extremely beautiful and unique biome known as the Sandhills. The Sandhills are a large, vast area that almost entirely covers the Panhandle, and it is both a desert and a wetlands, filled with large rolling hills of sand due to the fact that millions of years ago it was once completely covered by an ocean. Finally, after about 180 miles, we got to the largest bridge of the trip, right outside of Valentine. It is a quarter-mile long and gives you an amazing view, and is a great way to finish off the ride. If you want an easy ride, I would go the opposite direction, but if you want a more rewarding ride, I would start in Norfolk, because as you go along, the scenery just gets better and better. Each day, it made me more and more motivated to see what was around the next bend. After this, we traveled to Samuel R. McKelvey National Forest to spend the night, before we began the next leg of our journey, kayaking down the Niobrara River.